away.
This used to be a free country, you communists. You're a communist.
I'm a communist.
I'm a communist, yeah. What are you, a moron? Go
Must
away.
be, yeah. It's been
Go
talking
away.
to you.
Go away. You take photos to put onto websites to incite people to hurt people.
No, that's what your people
incite
do.
people to
That's what your
violence.
people
No,
do.
we don't.
I disagree with
You
violence.
don't take photographs of me.
Off you go. Off you go.
Why? Or what?
I don't care, mate.
Okay, don't worry. Hello, mate. Let the lady through. Come on, you thugs.
Off you go. I know what you want to do. Be a martyr. Just go up
I'm
the
doing
road.
Martin. Just doing a bit of filming.
Just go up the road, right? Just go up the road.
You'd like to give us an interview, Cole?
National Front. National Front, right? Yeah, fine. So it's National Front. Do whatever with him. He hangs around with people who deny life for us. Tony Martin, who's banned from Facebook. You ask your governor.
How do you feel about the Labour Party wanting to replace the white working class?
Oh, you are National Front, aren't you?
That's right, yeah.
You're a fascist, but don't talk to me.
Well, no, I'm not actually, but I was just willing to ask you a question.
I don't talk to Nazis, mate. So
Okay, fair enough. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming on board. I'll just get the comments up before I start. I've got the computer set up a bit wrong there. Here we go. Comments, see if anyone's in here. Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to put something up. Yep, welcome back, everyone, to another weekly, I don't know whether I call it a podcast or a live stream. Obviously, I'm doing the live stream now and then I upload it as a podcast later on. So there's a few people in there now, so I'll get things started. My missus has told me off a bit about the intro. She reckons it drags on a bit, so I don't know whether I use that every week. I might come up with another one and sort of alternate it or something. So I'll put that one up. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to press the like button or you get an electric shock. If Hope Not Hate are watching, I don't believe that was a genuine threat. I think that's just a bit of a joke. But yeah, where are we now? Yeah, Rachel from Accounts. I see that the Labour Party's been hit. They used to call it Tory sleaze when they was in opposition, but we've now got Labour Party sleaze where we've obviously had Angela No Brainer Rayner and her escapades and things, and now we've got Rachel from Accounts, who's you'd have thought, being from Accounts, you'd have thought she'd have been up on her paperwork, but she hasn't been. She didn't fill out the forms and pay the fee to the council for renting out her property. I think it was a thing that Labour bought in for several of their councils. They bought it in Croydon, where you had to register your property if you were renting it out. And I don't know about where her house is, but in Croydon, the fine was twice as much for not registering than it was for actually being a slum landlord. They carry out checks on the property and they charge an extortionate fee for doing it, and you're in more trouble for not paying the fee than you are for actually being a slum landlord. Well, anyway, to be fair to her, it does sound like a fairly minor sort of slip up. But when they've been that bad, putting pressure on other people, and when they've talked the talk, they need to walk the walk. They should be behaving as near to perfect as they can. But it's interesting to point out that for any reform people that are jumping on this, that this happened just after a similar thing happened with Richard Tice. This wasn't about property with Richard Tice's case, but he received a notional donation. Did you call it a notional donation? Basically, a gift. He was allowed to stay at someone's holiday place, and he was supposed to declare it within a certain amount of time on the parliamentary register, and he failed to do so. So you can, in some respects, you can understand why people might take freebies and things like that. But when you think how much money Richard Tice has got, it doesn't make sense. It must just be greed, must it? When people have got fortunes and they're still accepting free gifts, and then they're not even declaring them. So I think that's something. It's been a problem for a long time. We had obviously the expenses scandal last time Labour were in office. We've obviously had all the Tory sleaze the whole time that they've been in. Labour are back in, and they're just as sleazy as they were before, and the Tories were in between. And then you've got the Tories Mark II, which is reform, and they appear to be just as bad. Like I said, you can, to some degree, you can understand people not having time to do the paperwork and things like that. But all these parliamentary, all these MPs have got parliamentary assistants and people like that. They've got loads of people who have running around doing the lackey work for them. I know, obviously, in Rachel Reeves' case, that was a private matter, so she shouldn't have had her, or I assume she didn't have her parliamentary staff sorting it out. But that's the kind of thing that you employ letting agencies for. And she's claimed that the letting agency didn't tell her that she was supposed to declare the property and pay a fee. But I find that hard to believe. This is the sort of thing they're doing all the time. People like that tend to cross the T's and dot the I's. So I'll be very surprised if they didn't tell her that. Whether she's just denying it, but you'd have thought they'd have it on the writing or something like that. I've known quite a few people to work in real estate. I've never done that job myself, but I've privately rented a flat before as well, and the amount of paperwork you have to sign and fill out was absolutely ridiculous. It was almost as much as when I bought a house, and so it seems hard to. I don't know if she was renting. Again, I'm just surmising here. I'm not accusing her of anything. I'm not claiming to have any inside information, but I don't know if she was renting to someone she knew and thought she could get away with not declaring it. But it definitely sounds strange to me. I saw something about Mayday there. Yeah. Born in Mayday in '73, was good growing up, but now another shabby shithole. Yeah, I missed you by 4 years. I was born in Mayday in '77. More recently with Mayday, it's say more recent, it's probably about 15 years ago now, but it got such a bad reputation as a hospital, as being like third world and things like that, and people were calling it Mayday. And then so what they decided to do was, rather than fix all the underlying problems, they decided to change the name of it now. So it's now called Croydon University Hospital. So there's that. Yep, I lived in Croydon for a year when I was 18. Wasn't so bad then, but to be fair, 30 years now. So imagine it's changed. Yeah, it has. It's changed a lot. I've been telling people in Belfast that that when I was growing up in Thornton Heath, Croydon wasn't as bad as Belfast is now. Obviously, 30 odd years, 40 years have passed since then. So Croydon is a lot worse now than Belfast is now, but Belfast is worse now than Croydon was when I was growing up. So it's that sort of 30 or 40 year time frame that it can go from being, I still consider Belfast to be a brilliant city at the moment, but it only takes 20, 30 years for it to become a complete hellhole. Well, Croydon hasn't quite become a complete hellhole. I'd be exaggerating to say that, but it's nowhere nice as when I grew up. Yeah, I took a friend for a walk around Thornton Heath the other day. They actually came to London, and they wanted to they wanted to see some of the more ethnic areas. Unfortunately, I timed it a bit wrong. We landed up walking around Thornton Heath at about 10, half 10. So it was a bit quieter than it normally would be. But obviously, they was aware of that, so they still got the gist of of how much downhill it's gone. I apologise for the cough. I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. I was a lot worse yesterday. If I was as bad as yesterday, I probably would have cancelled. I'm not wimping out or anything, but when you're trying to talk for a while, it is a bit off-putting. On June 2nd, 78. Oh, that's a year younger than me then. Yeah. May die, yeah, that's what I was saying before. Born in Lewisham Hospital in 1963. Yeah, I think Ireland got says here they did to Ireland in 15 years, maybe 20, what it took to do to London in 75 plus years. Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I've only visited the Republic of Ireland briefly, but obviously I've spent a lot of time in in Northern Ireland, and that's gone downhill dramatically in. I think I first went out there about 15 years ago, and since then it's been going downhill pretty fast. But I think that tends to happen. It's probably similar with areas of London. You get, once the surrounding areas have gone downhill, whatever areas are left, it doesn't take long for them to catch up. And I think with the Republic of Ireland's problem, I think their problem is the fact that they're in the EU, and they took so much money off the EU, and they've got stuck taking all these immigrants. Plus, also, a friend of mine pointed this out to me many years ago, that a lot of the Irish tend to have like a victim sort of mentality, where they feel that they've been downtrodden for years. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant, but the fact that they feel that they've been downtrodden for years and they've got that sort of victim mentality, it makes them sort of affiliate themselves and sympathise more with people claiming to have suffered similar problems. So that's coming back to bite them now. Hopefully, for their case, the fact that it's happened so fast is something that they could actually realise it's happened. Because I know that in England, we're in London anyway, in between generations, you get all these school teachers and politicians and things, and they try to lie to you. I remember when I was a kid, I was told by grown-ups that I trust that years ago people didn't have to lock their front doors, or they'd hang the door key through the letterbox on a bit of string, their mum would, so that when they came in, they didn't have to keep disturbing everyone to open the front door, and they obviously weren't trusted to run around with keys and things like that. And then when I was at school, I had school teachers telling me that wasn't true. That's just people being nostalgic, and London's never been like that. But well, I know who I believe. I know that the untrustworthy sort of people that you have as teachers, and then genuine people who you know have got your best interests at heart, who you've got a better chance of believing. Yep. While it's not great, Tice taking freebies, Labour weaponising against their rivals, then doing the same themselves is the point of irony. Exactly. Yeah. not a lot of pubs on the Shankill now. No, well, it's actually improved a little bit over the past over the past 6 or 7 months, because the Bar Berlin that shut a couple of years ago, that's now reopened, and I think it was a couple of years ago it shut. That reopened probably 6 or 7 months ago, and also the Northern Ireland club, the Northern Ireland Supporters Club, that shut probably 5 or 6 years ago. That's now been taken over by the Stadium Bar, and it's only the outside area, but it's open for events like on the 12th of July. So over the past year, the Shankill Road has actually improved slightly, the number of pubs on it. But I know there were a lot more pubs years ago. Yeah, I take it this is about Ireland. They conned everyone with the Celtic Tiger boom. People take their eye off the ball when they have money, and now times are a bit harder. People are getting really pissed. Yeah, I think that's a lot to do. I think that's another reason why middle and upper class people are a lot less concerned in general. This is not just in Ireland. This is the UK, probably America, and everywhere else as well, where middle class and upper class people are less concerned about immigration because it doesn't affect them as much. It means they can get their grass cut for cheaper, they can get their car washed for cheaper, they've got more of a variety of takeaways and things like that, and generally they don't have to live right next door to them, or when they do have to live next door to them, the ones they're living next door to are doctors and lawyers and accountants, rather than the people serving the food, the people cutting the grass, and the people not working, and the people dealing drugs. So yeah, again, when economies are doing pretty well, people are less concerned about immigration. Yeah. I'm from just outside Birmingham. It was limited to a few areas: Smethwick, Handsworth, Perry Bar, and other areas around 90% white up until 15 or so years ago. So now those 90% areas are about 60%. Yeah, I think Birmingham's got a massive problem with immigration, and that was where, I think it was Smethwick, wasn't it, where a Tory candidate is often misquoted as saying, if you want an N-word for a neighbour, vote Labour. But I think it was actually, if you want a coloured for a neighbour, vote Labour. I think it was coloured anyway. Again, this is similar to the South Africa thing. And the Enoch Powell thing. What he said was actually 100% proved correct, and yet he's still condemned for saying it. What Enoch Powell said in his so-called Rivers of Blood speech, again, has sort of not 90% been proven correct, and he's still condemned for that. And the end of apartheid in South Africa has been an absolute disaster, not just for the whites but for the blacks as well, and that's still celebrated as a massive success. It just goes to show how ridiculous a lot of things are. And I think was it Malcolm X that went to Smethwick as well? I don't think it was Martin Luther King. I think it was Malcolm X came over to Smethwick for like a photo op or whatever he did to make a point about something. And the areas have been completely decimated. I'm going to get onto this bit of the Rex bar in a minute, but yeah. So and also, like I mentioned in last week's live stream, the black guy Benjamin Zephaniah, and he said, I think it's Handsworth he was living in. He said whatever road it was there, you'll probably know the road. I don't know it, but he said that the police sort of recognised that as their area, and they was allowed to get away with what they wanted. And then he said about in in areas of London and in St Paul's in Bristol, there was certain roads where the police would just leave them alone, and they was allowed to get up to whatever they wanted. And again, he was talking about 40 years ago. Well, in fact, more than that. He's in his 60s, so he's probably talking about 50 years ago. It was like that. So with these no-go zones, people say there are no-go zones in London and other cities in England. And to some degree, that's correct, because the police, they can get properly mobbed up, they can get riot gear, they can get armed units and things like that, and they can go into any area in England. But realistically, just to be patrolling certain areas and to patrol them in the same manner that they patrol predominantly white areas, and to have the confidence for one or two police officers on their own to stop and search someone, if you look at it that way, then there's like thousands, well, at least hundreds, probably thousands of no-go areas. This one's just come up here. The Rex bar still open? Is the Rex bar still open? Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's actually the nearest bar to my house. I'll go in there from time to time. I don't really go in pubs as much as I used to, but it's great to have the Rex bar just more or less at the end of my road. So that's still there. To be fair, I go from time to time. I go in all the bars on the Shankill. And the ones just off it. There's quite a few. It's actually brilliant for pubs. When I was growing up in Fulton Heath, there's quite a few pubs. I don't think it was anywhere when I was growing up. It was nowhere near as probably started going in pubs about 93, and it was nowhere near as good as the Shankill Road or somewhere lots of other places in Northern Ireland. But it was a lot better than it was now. To be fair, I think the only reason a lot of the pubs in Fulton Heath haven't shut, well, a lot of them have, but the ones that are still going, the only reason a lot of them are still open is because of Crystal Palace. I think you've got lots of pubs that are near specific venues stay open because they get that every week or so. They get that hit where they just stop 10, 20 times as many people as normal going in there, and they make their week's money in an afternoon or an evening. So that's and also growing up in Fulton Heath, when Palace used to play, depending on who they were playing, you used to get some great turnouts. A lot of the away supporters were pretty good, and Fulton Heath High Street used to just look like it was like going back in time, because all just for like a couple of hours, just for like half hour or so before the game and the same afterwards, the whole place would just be all full of white people. I didn't actually see that. Anyone see Mary Lou getting abused in Dublin during the week? It was funny. It went viral pretty quick. They had him in court, but he was assaulted first, to be honest. But his phone knocked out of his hand. I didn't actually see that. I'll look that up later on. I assume this is Enoch Powell, the best Prime Minister we never had. Yeah. Like I said, virtually everything he said in that Rivers of Blood speech was spot on. I think earlier on in his career, when he was the health minister, he made a bit of a mistake he made a big mistake by recruiting from the Caribbean. He's often quoted as having actually gone out to the Caribbean to recruit, but I believe that was John Perfumo or someone else. And to a lot of people in the Caribbean, all us white people all look the same. So I think that was John Perfumo, and it quite often gets quoted as being Enoch Powell. But yeah, he was definitely spot on with the Rivers of Blood speech. Even what he said about the black man holding the whip hand over the white man, it was only about It's only about 15 years after that, I think, that Robert Ralph was jailed for wanting to sell his house to a white family. And then you regularly get foreigners that only want to rent or sell to people of their own race. So again, and black only housing associations and all sorts of things like that was within 15, 20 years of what Powell said. So he was spot on with that. Enoch has been rehabilitated. More people agree with him now than they did 20 years ago. Probably more people in the street, more people that we're likely to speak to probably do. But when you see on social media and on TV, even the Conservative Party, a lot of them just talk about him with disdain. I think I could be wrong about this. So Susan Hall, when she stood as the Conservative Party candidate for the mayor of London, I don't think she even came out and said it. I think they found a social media post or something with her supporting what Powell said, and Hope Not Hate jumped on it. I think other media outlets, and she was getting slagged off all over the place for agreeing what an MP within her own party had said years earlier. Enoch Powell warned us. Nobody listened. Well, that was part of his speech, wasn't it? I can hear the cries of extradition. How dare you say such a thing? And how people have a tendency to blame the messenger and accuse you of, I can't remember it off by heart, but of wanting or even trying to cause something to happen just by merely predicting it. Obviously not his exact words, but. Yeah, pretty sure either Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. I'm pretty sure it was Malcolm X went to Smethwick. Benji, I assume that's Benjamin Zephaniah, was a white hating wife beater. I didn't know about the wife beating. Obviously, I knew he was a white hater. If a white person had written his nonsense, they'd have said they must have learning difficulties. How he's recognised poet or was. They do. To be fair, look, we get accused of racism quite a lot, obviously. But to be fair, some of these white liberals, the way they sort of expect, the way they treat a lot of these blacks, where they sort of expect lower standards for them and things, expect them to be violent, and set lower standards for them. They're probably being just as racist as we are. It's like everyone knows that they don't tend to be as intelligent as we are, and we come out and say it, but then the white liberals demonstrate it every day by saying how brilliant someone like Benjamin Zephaniah was, when actually he's crap. And people like Lenny Henry as well. Apparently he was, I don't know if he just has or is just about to speak to a committee about reparations and this, that and the other. What a gift, what a charmed life that man has had living in Britain, because he was fortunate enough for his ancestors to have been taken over to the Caribbean as slaves, and for him to come to Britain. He's been given a career on the TV. I don't think he's ever had a proper job. He's always just done rubbish presenting. He's supposed to be some sort of comedian, but there's nothing funny. There's nothing funny about him. And he's just had a whole career just off being black. And then he complains about it and wants reparations. Just trying to work these out. Race Relations Act, done the British write-up. Again, I think there's been several Race Relations Acts, but they tend to come out around most of the, I've said this before, but they tend to come out around most of the world at around the same time. It goes to show that we're not actually being run by the people that are supposedly running us. People consider it a conspiracy theory to talk about the New World Order, or sorry, I should have turned my phone off. Really, I just had a missed call. Turn it off now. Yeah, sorry about that. I thought I turned it off. Oh, it's off. Yeah. It's considered a conspiracy theory to talk about the New World Order and the deep state and things like that. But you can see it's there for a fact. Where, like I said, all these different acts, like the Same-Sex Marriage Act or the Race Relations Act, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, and all these sort of things, they get pushed on virtually the whole world or the whole white world at the same time. So it's obvious to anyone that stuff is going on behind the scenes, but to what degree? But the Race Relations Act, it makes things very difficult. And it's only for us, when other races can still get by and have their black only things and their Asian only things, and I read a good article recently about who was really behind the Windrush. Let's just say the small hats. Yeah, the Empire Windrush was originally a German boat. It was taken, or ship, should I say? It was taken over by the German Navy during World War II, and it was used, I think, as a troop transport ship. At the end of the war, the whole time it was being run by the German Navy, it was not once used to try and invade Britain. And then at the end of the war, it was taken by the British as a spoils of war, and then it was originally used as a troop transport ship by us, then sold off to private owners who went on under a British flag to use it to invade us. The irony of it, that the Germans had it throughout the Second World War, didn't once try to invade us with or without the Empire Windrush, and then once we got our hands on it, we used it to invade ourselves, or other people used it to invade us. I assume this is Sarah Poachin. Reform woman notices too many non-whites in adverts and she's racist. A Pakistani notices too many white people in positions in Scotland and silence. Again, it's what I'm saying earlier, where people have got lower standards of these foreigners, and something that we'd get called out for, that they just let that slide. She talks about there not being any white people in adverts. I've probably mentioned this before. There's one type of advert we do still predominantly see white people, and that's the people waiting to die. Have you all seen these adverts where you've got an old couple smiling? Oh, I can't wait to die. I've paid for my funeral already. My family are going to have it right off. It's absolutely ridiculous. All the people looking forward to building a life and things like that are all non-whites, and the people that can't wait to die are are all whites. It's almost as if they're trying to advertise dying to us. But yeah, and it was also telling that Farage didn't back her up on it. I think what she said was it was part. I think someone phoned in and said more or less that there's like too many ethnics in adverts and things like that, and she basically just agreed with them. It wasn't as if she just came out with it saying it as a rant. And then Nigel Farage, he stopped short of throwing her under the bus, but he didn't really back her up. I think he basically said he didn't agree with what she said, but he wasn't going to punish her, or she's entitled to that opinion, or something like that. But it'd be interesting to hear whether Nigel Farage thinks there's too many non-whites in adverts or on TV in general. Because it's not just adverts; it's a lot of the TV programs, especially when you're watching period dramas and Doctor Who and things like that. Because I don't watch that much TV, but when you watch TV, other than political programs and that, obviously, but when you watch fictional TV, science fiction or any other sort of fiction, it's meant to be like escapism, like period dramas and things like that. You're meant to get away from the horrors of the world you're living in, but now they've changed it all. So instead of getting away from them, you're just reminded of them, and it's pointless. It's pointless watching them. You're better off watching a program or a film from years ago than you are now. They could actually make films better with black and white cameras than they can do now with all the technology available to them. He's demanding 18 billion. I assume this is Lenny Henry. It's actually 18 trillion, 18 or 19 trillion. I think it is what he's demanding. I think he's basically demanding that we bankrupt ourselves to pay all the reparations. And I believe they want similar money from America as well. I don't know if they've mentioned France, Spain, and Portugal, but you would have thought they'd want a lot of money off them. I think they're waiting to see if either us or America are stupid to back down first, and then they go double hard on the rest of them. But I've said it lots of times. Out of all the people alive today, with the exception of a few super rich people, out of all the people alive today, the people that have benefited most out of the slave trade are the descendants of. I'm talking about the transatlantic slave trade now. I know there's been other slave trades, but out of the transatlantic slave trade, the people that have benefited the most who are still alive today are the descendants of the slaves, because either they wouldn't be alive or they'd be living in Africa if that hadn't happened. So if anyone owes reparations, and bearing in mind how many British sailors died bringing them over from Africa and fighting other countries to end the slave trade, I think they probably owe us 18 or 19 trillion rather than it being the other way around. I might for a bit of a laugh, I might come up with some figures and write a letter to send Lenny Henry an invoice asking him for trillions of pounds. I don't think I'll get anywhere, but it might have a bit of a laugh and he might complain about it somewhere. A lot of middle class lives wouldn't know good literature if it hit them in the face. They watch Strictly whilst eating dime for two from M&S. They're Philistines. Ignorance, not racism. The Kalergi plan in full effect. Yep. Starmer only serves the EU, WEF, globalist New World Order. Yep, and that's about right. some of Europe have it a lot worse. Mind Austria, Germany, but yeah, still terrible here too. People getting jailed over social media. It's madness. Yep. I know in France and Germany, probably Poland and that as well, people get jailed for Holocaust revisionism. They use the word Holocaust denial. I don't think anyone's actually a Holocaust denier, but there are a lot of people that put sensible arguments forwards that the stories we're told about the Holocaust aren't as true as they make out. I live not far from Coventry. 2 separate attacks on women by a man with an Eastern European accent, and a third attack by a light-skinned male wearing a balaclava. All happened in daylight. Yeah. I don't know. I was reading about another case of girls getting attacked in broad daylight. I don't know if it's becoming more common this kind of thing, or if women aren't walking home at night as much, so they I say have to. Obviously, they don't have to attack them anyway, but so they resort to attacking them in daylight. Wurzel Gummidge is on Talking Pictures every Sunday afternoon. I assume that's the original one and not the because they redid it, didn't they? They brought it out with a couple of black kids in it, didn't they? I think that was about 3 or 4 years ago. Oh, and Gladiator 2 had Denzel Washington as a Roman emperor. I love Gladiator 1. It was awful. Yeah, I've watched that Gladiator 2. I watched the first one years ago, and I watched Gladiator 2 more recently. And I think like I said, they love putting ethnics into roles like that. They had the Roman Empire had people from North Africa in it, but they were like European North Africans. They weren't sub-Saharan Africans. So it's absolutely ridiculous. But they use quotes of things saying that someone was from Africa or from that part of the world to try and imply that they were actually sub-Saharan Africans. Farage is probably smart enough to not have a television. Yeah. Multicultural bread and circus, yeah. I'll just put that. That's what I assumed you meant. Gladiator 2 was awful, yeah. Farage feels the same, in my opinion. His problem is he's playing the politics of the 2000s. The world has changed and out of favour, and he's been left behind. Hold your nose and vote reform, and ends Tory Labour. I think really, yeah, there probably won't, in most seats, there won't really be anyone else to vote for. So I think a lot of people are going to have to hold their nose and vote reform, but they need to realise that they are still voting Tory. Really, you're going to get. It's gone from like a 2-party state to a 2.1 party state, where reform. I think virtually everyone in reform is something to do, or was something to do with the Conservative Party. I think Farage was a member when he was younger. He was dancing with Priti Patel at their at their conference a couple of years ago. Richard Tice was donating big money to them up until a few years ago. Lee Anderson was obviously one of their MPs. He'd actually been a councillor for Labour, then an MP for the Tories, and now he's an MP for Reform. UKIP's two MPs were both poached from the Conservative Party, and they're talking about them getting a majority in the next general election. But I would have thought a lot more than half of the people standing in seats with a good chance of winning will be ex-Tories, either councillors or MPs. So probably a lot of the people that are in Parliament now as Tories will be standing as MPs for Reform come the thing. So really, it's just a rebranded Conservative Party. I think a lot of them are probably in the run up to the next, assuming that Reform was still ahead in the polls. A lot of the Tories will be jumping ship to Reform in the run up to the next general election, and this won't be due to a change in politics. This will be just to the fact that they know they've got a better chance of being re-elected. They never show black in a bad light on telly or in films. Senator Joe was correct all those years ago. You know, the blacks, I think they do in the odd occasion show black in a bad light, but it's a lot less. There's they definitely go out of their way to show them in a good light, or as the victim. And they're always trying to get on in life. They have to work harder than the whites around them, and they get picked on just because of the colour of their skin, although they're really nice. And things like, it's trying to offset what people see in real life, because people watch so much TV that in real life they have so many negative experiences of blacks in real life that when they watch TV, it's portrayed the other way around. And although people don't believe that what they see on TV is actually correct, I think they believe that it's representative and that similar things are going on, and it does sort of sway their sort of mental balance and how they consider things. People don't understand white working class had it hard back in those days. Very hard. Yeah, that's I think I wrote into a newspaper once about 20 years ago when they was talking about the slave trade and that, and I said that the white people at the time, white kids at the time, were running in and out of spinning jennies, and white men were getting press ganged into the Royal Navy. And I bet there's a lot of men getting thrown around on rigging and getting cannonballs and bits of wood splintered into them that would have loved much rather have been in a field picking cotton. Because again, something that they always seem to forget is that there's only I think it's like an 8 or 9 week harvest period for cotton. It's not as if there's nowhere in the world that grows cotton all year round, or sugar or anything like that. All these different crops have got harvest times where there's quite intense labour, but then for a lot of the time there's not that much to do. So in modern times, farms tend to use seasonal workers who obviously are at university or working somewhere else when it's not farming season. But in the days of the slave trade, I'm sure they would have had to work really hard for a couple of months, but the rest of the time there would have been some work to do, but it would have been nowhere near as much work as is portrayed. And when you see photographs, I'll probably get an exact figure for this soon, but when you see photographs of slaves who've got scarred backs from being repeatedly whipped and things like that, those photographs would have cost fortunes to take. even 100 years ago, it cost a fortune to take a photograph. Not long before that, you'd literally have to pose for about a minute while the gunpowder went off and everything set like that. So when you're going back over 200 years ago, when some of the first photographs were ever taken, and somebody took the trouble to take a photograph of a slave with bad injuries to his back, it's not as like somebody took that photo on a smartphone. Somebody has invested money and time in taking that photograph because it was so rare to see. And I think someone said a while ago that in today's money, an African slave would cost about 100 grand. It wasn't as if everyone had slaves and you could get like 10 of them for 100 quid or anything like that. It was literally 100 grand for one slave. So it's like if you went out and bought a sports car, that'd be your sports car. And if you wanted to just not bother changing the engine oil, rev it too much, keep accelerating and wheel spinning it, and just rub it up against the curb when you park and whatever like that. If it's your car and you've just spent 100 grand on it, you can do that, but you'd have to be pretty stupid to do that. And it would have been the same back then with a slave. If you owned a slave, although some people did get in trouble for it, for mistreating slaves, I think that you could actually get in trouble for it. But if somebody owned a slave, they could probably get away with like completely whipping them and abusing them and running them into the ground. But again, if they did that, there'd be 100 grand in today's money out of pocket. So the idea that slaves were routinely abused to that degree is absolutely ridiculous. I watched a couple of videos on Simon Webb's History Debunked, and he spoke about how indentured white men who were sent out for just a couple of years or whatever were treated far worse and had a higher death rate and things like that. It can't have been nice being a slave, but like you've just said, white people had it just as bad, if not worse. Getting press ganged into the Navy, kids having to work and things like that. I think a lot of people judge things by today's standards. They think while all the blacks were picking cotton and sugar and getting whipped and stuff like that, they think that all the whites were playing PlayStation or something. But again, when the slaves were guaranteed food all year round, whereas which is one of the problems with the end of the slave trade in America anyway. But whites are quite often, the work have run out or they get sacked or whatever like that, and we're quite often starved to death or have to go for miles to find new work. But because they'd spent so much money investing in the slaves, rather than at the end of the season just sending them on their way, they obviously kept hold of them. I haven't seen that one. No. I guess there's a comment there. I got that joke. I won't put it up in case I'll get in trouble. Oh, that's it. The original Wurzel, John Pertwee and Una Stubbs. Yeah. Yeah. I used to enjoy watching them as a kid, but for obvious reasons, I couldn't get on with the new one. North Africans were Mediterranean like Greeks and Romans. Yep, definitely. Yeah. Which is the ridiculous thing about when they want. I'd look around the British Museum a little while ago, and how they want like the Elgin marbles back, and although that's obviously not the Africans, but the Egyptians want like things from the tombs, all the artifacts of the mummies and things like that back. And they imply or say that we stole them, when in actual fact we were buying them. And I pointed out to my friend when I was at the British Museum that it's a bit like if you sold your house and then it went up in value, and then you just said, "Well, I want my house back." So you sold it. You can't just have it back. But I didn't know it was worth that much money. Well, it wasn't then. And it's like that with these artifacts. The Egyptians have broken into the tombs, stolen the gold and the jewels, and then they'd left the artifacts that are now at the British Museum in there. They'd just thrown them on the floor. And it's the same with various other places that Britain has acquired things from. I don't think we went anywhere and just sort of stole everything. It was probably the odd war where we took a few things when we was genuinely at war with someone. But it's the way things are implied that the British Empire just stole from everywhere. And things that when they talk about the minerals and things from Africa and Asia, and they forget about all the railroads that we laid in India and things like that. That we were trading with them, and they done very well out of it. They done very well out of it themselves. I don't watch telly at all. The odd TV show or film I want to watch, I stream online. Yeah, that's what I do as well. To be fair, I mainly watch things on YouTube. I watch some of the streaming things as well. And then when I'm at other people's houses, I sometimes get stuck watching TV, but it's more of a chore than a privilege. If EastEnders was realistic, 99% of the cast would be black, well, or probably more likely Asian. But yeah, there'd be a lot of blacks and Asians in it. But again, I think it's got a lot more in it now than when I last watched it. But I think one of the reasons in things like that they deliberately show less blacks and Asians in settings like that, because they don't want people to realise how bad it's come. Because when you tell a lot of people that live out in suburbs and things like that what certain areas are like, it's like when you talk about the no-go zones. A lot of people just think you're making it up or exaggerating it. Yep. No black guy was conscripted and told to climb out of a trench and run towards machine gun nests. No, I know there obviously were blacks in the First and Second World War, but firstly, they were all volunteers, and secondly, they in the majority of cases they weren't so much front line. There was more dealing with other things. It's like with the Vietnam War. Although there was loads of blacks conscripted into that war from America, most of them were doing jobs like working in kitchens and things like that. The majority of people to get killed in the majority of Western people to get killed in Vietnam were white. Obviously, if you include the Vietnamese on both sides, there would probably be Vietnamese, but. I've been following Simon Tomlin on here. He's been growing on me. I've watched some of his stuff. Like I said, I agree with some stuff and not other things. I will watch more in the future and make a more informed decision. London mass non-compliance protest against digital ID. Save the date, 13th of December. Okay, and I'll probably be in Northern Ireland then. But if I am in London, I'll try and make that. I'll write that down there. Yeah, that's it. While we're talking about dates, obviously, Remembrance Sunday is the Sunday after next, the 9th of November. And the National Front will be forming up at 2:15, ready for a 2:45 march off from Bressingham Place in London to the Cenotaph. You don't have to be a National Front member to attend. Other groups of like-minded people are welcome to attend. Just basically dress reasonably smart, no face coverings. You can wear sunglasses or a hat, but no sort of masks or anything. So there's that going on, and also I won't be doing the live stream next week because I've got to be somewhere. So the next live stream I'll be doing will be on the 13th of November. We'll do a bit more going through the. I have one more thing to say before I get back onto the comments. They've set up a new parliamentary group because I think the other one fell apart to establish. It's been established to provide the government with a working definition of anti-Muslim hatred or Islamophobia, and obviously a lot of people, myself included, are up in arms about that. But people do need reminding that this is what has been given to the Jews already. There's already a IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is followed by our government and the main political parties in Britain, that gives special privileges to Jews, where you're not allowed to accuse, or it's considered anti-Semitic to accuse a Jew of being more loyal to Israel or international Jewry than he is to his own country, when that same thing wouldn't apply to anyone else, although it may apply to Muslims once this new act comes through. But again, this is one of these things that everyone should be angry about, but everyone should also remember that it started with the Jews. They were given this privilege first. It's going to the Muslims next by the looks of things, and then it'll filter down to other minorities, and it'll be left with whites being the only people that don't have that privilege. So they've just set up a new working group on that, so they'll be coming up with something fairly soon. Pretty sure one of those scarred slaves didn't end up like that by being a bit lazy, probably, or attacked one of the other slaves. Yep. And even if it was for being lazy, he wouldn't have got it just for being lazy once. That was probably, or even for attacking another slave once. Whatever he did, that was probably several or even several dozen repeat offences. Like I said, a black slave is like £100,000 piece of equipment. You can treat it how you want, but if you want any return on your investment, you'll treat it reasonably well. That sounds interesting. Read People of the Abyss by American Jack London. It shows the living and working conditions of working class in the East End. No films about the Barbary slave trade. No, I wouldn't have thought there would be. Yeah. Support all organisations and events standing against digital ID. If you're organising, drop your details below so I can amplify yours too. Coming dates: Cardiff, 25th of October. That's gone. The 25th of October's gone, isn't it? Or is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's gone there. I assume this is about Simon Tomlin, isn't it? Don't like the way he disparages Christianity. I don't understand why he does it. No. To be fair, I don't understand why people do this. Well, I understand why people want to be pagans and things like that, but I wouldn't have thought there's many people, probably might even be no people, that come from a long line of recent pagans. I know that our ancestors would have been pagans over 1,000 years ago, but all our ancestors that we know, well, the majority of them that we know, would have been Christian. So it's if someone wants to be pagan, then that's one thing, but then to disparage Christians is like I said, I haven't seen all of his things, so I don't know to what extent he does that, but I definitely don't agree with doing that. Yeah. Yeah, indentured servants were disposable. If you pay 100 grand in today's money for a slave, you would treat them reasonably well and get your money's worth. Yep. Africans sold their own. Hollywood don't mention that in the slave films. No. I was working in a school at one stage, and they had some like writing by kids up on the walls, and someone wrote. In fact, it was probably a white kid they got to write it, but it was like a point of view from a slave or whatever, and they it sounded like they was living some sort of idealistic sort of life, walking along the beach, and all of a sudden, a load of white people turned up and threw a net over them, and they landed up on a ship, and it was. And I think it got top marks. It got like 5 stars or whatever this. And I thought it's completely incorrect. But from this propaganda that the school, and this was a white school as well, predominantly white school, but from the propaganda the school was probably pushing, it was probably a top class article. Have you seen African or Arabic slave markets today? The slaves, bags, they're actually bagged up like cold potatoes. To be fair, I haven't, but I can imagine what they'd be like. In the early 1900s, the Jack London book. Yeah. Spoils of war happen in every war since the year dot. Yep. Are you friends with Simon Tomlin, and would you collaborate with him? I'm not friends with him. I don't know him personally, but to be fair, within reason, I'd collaborate with anyone. Yeah. Pretty sure we took the Elgin marbles so they didn't get destroyed. Yeah, that's like the same with the same thing with the mummies and that from ancient Egypt. They'd had the jewels and the gold that they wanted from it, and they would have just got destroyed. So. Yes, I read it the same with the anti-Semitic, but the Muslims, I believe the Hindus are asking for it now. I think the Sikhs. I hadn't heard the Hindus. I think the Sikhs have been talking about wanting like special laws to protect them and all those kind of things. They'll all jump on it. The more that get away with it, I think so far it's only the Jews that have actually got it. The Muslims are likely to get it soon, and the Sikhs, the Hindus, and everyone else will be after it soon after that. Have you seen the new advert where a white bloke is harassed? I think I've heard someone else talking about it. I don't think I've actually seen it yet. When it's mostly blacks doing it to whites, totally spineless, pandering, Starmer human jellyfish. Bread. Yes, I think they do it to try and create a false sense of balance. You've got what's going on in real life, and then you've got what's going on in fiction, and then they want to try and make people think that everything's equal. Add-on trains, yeah, that sums it up. I know the London Underground can be terrible for adverts. Like some of the things they allow to be advertised. Like Sadiq Khan made a stand about not allowing junk food to advertise on TFL, which, to be fair, sounds pretty reasonable. But then he went on himself to host or present a Kebabs Award, obviously because tends to be a certain demographic. So he was fine with presenting that himself. And then in his his autobiography, Breathe, his book, I don't know if it's an autobiography or just a book, but he's in that he happened to mention his favourite brand of chocolate bar several times, and then on the TFL on the Underground, they've had adverts for immigration solicitors or something like that, and Muslim dating sites and various. And various things like that. So it's all one-sided, and it takes a moral high ground to certain things and then lets other despicable things go on there. Protected characteristics, that's it, yeah. I probably shouldn't put that up, but I will do. I think Lenny's scars on his back from Don French. And that one, yeah. Somali pirates stole a whole village outside of Cork. Look up the sacking of Baltimore. Granted, it was a very small village, but it definitely happened, yeah. I wish all the different right-wing groups would stick together. I've seen too many egos and infighting. We've all got one common goal, and together we stand strong. Jiu-jitsu expert took down a black African on the London Underground for stealing off a young woman. Glad he was around. That sounds like good news. I think I'm going to call it a day now. I've been on for just over an hour and a quarter. So thanks very much for coming on everyone. I'll just remind everyone again that where are we now? that we've got Remembrance Sunday coming up, and trying to use the computer. I'm not that clever with computers. Oh no, I can't do that. I was trying to put something up then, but we won't worry about that. Yeah, so it's Remembrance Sunday is coming up on the 9th of November, and that's the National Front will be forming up at 2:15 for a 2:45 march off. It doesn't normally. It normally by the time we march up to Victoria Street to the Cenotaph, lay a wreath, and then go to the Women of World War II Memorial, and then go and say a few words afterwards. It's normally just over an hour to do that. It's a reasonable. It's not that fast a pace for anyone who's getting on a bit or anything who wants to come along. So yeah, the sort of the more people, the better for that. And again, like I said, we allow people from other groups to come along as well. So everyone's welcome for that. And like I said, I won't be doing a live stream next week, next Thursday. So it'll be the 13th of November on the Thursday at 7:30. It'll be the next live stream. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'll look forward to in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.